Most people can point to a single moment where their life changed. For me, it started with an envelope. On the surface, it was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I was 17 years old, standing in my mother's kitchen, staring at an acceptance letter from Georgetown University, a partial athletic scholarship, a future, a way forward, a culmination of years of sacrifice, years of waking up before sunrise, years of studying while other kids were partying, years of training when no one was watching. For a brief moment, I felt like everything was falling into place. But looking back now, I realized that the acceptance letter wasn't the beginning of my future. It was the first move in a game that had started long before I was born. Because the truth is, my story didn't begin with Georgetown. It began with my father, Panama Petrovitch, a man I loved, a man I admired, a man I never truly knew. Growing up, I knew two things about him. First, he was armed. Second, he never talked about what he actually did. Not once. Not where he went. Not who he worked with. Not why he disappeared for weeks and sometimes months at a time. He would receive a phone call, grab a bag, kiss my mother goodbye, and leave. Then, weeks later, a phone number none of us recognized would appear on the caller ID. His voice would come through the line, calm, steady. He would ask about school, ask about basketball, ask if I was keeping up with the training plan he left behind. Then he would hang up and disappear again. As a child, I accepted it. As a teenager, I questioned it. As a man, I became obsessed with it because one day he didn't come home. Instead, two army officers arrived at our front door. I remember every detail. The knock, the uniform, the folded flag, the look in my mother's face before anyone spoke a single word. She already knew. Some part of her understood before the rest of us did. The official story was simple. Training accident. Investigation pending. Nothing more, nothing less. That was the story they gave us. The story they expected us to accept. The story I repeated for years. But the older I became, the more impossible the story felt. Questions began appearing where certainty should have existed. Small things at first. Things easy to dismiss. A teacher somehow knowing personal information he shouldn't have known. Influential people recognizing my name before introduction to me. Conversation stopping when I entered the room. Strangers studying me with the uncomfortable familiarity usually reserved for old friends. Every road somehow led back to my father, a man who was supposed to be gone, a man whose past was supposedly buried, a man whose name still seemed to open doors years after his death. Then there was his call sign, Enforcer 7. I heard it as a child. I remembered it as a teenager. As an adult, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who calls someone Enforcer 7? What kind of job requires a designation instead of a name? What kind of life forces a man to hide everything from the people he loves? The deeper I looked, the stranger things became, because everyone seemed to know pieces of the story. Everyone except me, the son, the person who should have known the truth. Then Georgetown happened, and suddenly people around me started revealing things they shouldn't know. My acceptance, my future, my plans. Information that had no business leaving my house somehow existed in places I couldn't explain. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Then I thought it was networking. Then I realized something far more disturbing. Maybe people weren't interested in me because of who I was. Maybe they were interested in me because of who my father had been. That realization changed everything. Because if powerful people knew my father's name, if military leaders remembered him, if businessmen recognized him, if educators spoke about him with unusual respect, then maybe the official story wasn't the whole story. Maybe the man who raised me wasn't a simple soldier. Maybe he was something else entirely. And if that was true, then far more dangerous questions emerged. If my father had spent his life protecting secrets, what happens when his son starts uncovering them? What happens when people who buried the truth realize someone is digging? And what happens if my father's death wasn't the end of the story? What if the only beginning was this? My name is Hannibal Petrovitch. I thought I was preparing for college. I thought I was preparing for adulthood. I thought I was stepping into the next chapter of my life. I was wrong. Because somewhere hidden inside my father's past was a secret powerful enough to reach into my future. A secret that connected soldiers, politicians, businessmen, and people operating in the shadows. A secret that had been hidden for nearly 2 decades. And before long, I would discover that some mysteries don't stay buried. Some wait patiently for the right person at the right time to uncover them. And then, when I finally learned the truth about Enforcer 7, I would wish I hadn't, because the truth wasn't waiting for me. It was watching me. It had been waiting and watching me my entire life. The only question was, why? And what exactly had my father died protecting?